John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com Eagles insider, also covers the NFL for FanRag Sports. We're going to get into all of this stuff. First of all, John, how's the weather up there today?
Oh, it's not bad. You can't complain about training camp. I was joking. If it started a week earlier, we'd all be dead. So all the reporters, that week before was just brutal. So it was overcast for most of the day. It's as cool as it could possibly be for July. So from that standpoint, then no complaints whatsoever.
Today, Jim Schwartz did complain a little bit before the presser, wondering basically what else is he going to be asked at this point. But a couple of things that did stand out to me that he was asked. They went and asked him about Marcus Smith. And in his explanation, John, he didn't actually say anything negative per se about Marcus Smith. He brought up the fact that they have other guys like Alex McAllister and Derek Barnett and Chris Long. And he kind of, in a roundabout way, saying, well, there's no room for him on the team. But at no point did he actually criticize Marcus Smith, who is now a Seahawk.
Yeah, I thought, because obviously the Eagles have moved on, I thought the most interesting part of that was that he did mention Alex McAllister, because he's been kind of a non-entity around Eagles camp, and few people mention him, and the fact that he's a seventh-round pick from last year they stashed on injured reserve, asked him to gain weight, but he went on injured reserve at 239 pounds. He came off at 239 pounds. So he's the thinnest defensive end you've ever seen in your life. And I always joke Dorial Green Beckham looked like he was bigger. So I'm not sure where he fits in, but obviously Jim Schwartz sees something. As far as Marcus Smith, I mean, the guy's got athletic talent, but it just didn't click for him. And maybe it was because he was drafted for a 3-4 defense by a different regime. And if you think about his rookie year, they even moved him inside because of injuries for a little bit. Then he's outside. Then he's asked to be a defensive end. So maybe he goes into Seattle and they can tap into that ability to just rush off the edge, because I do think he can do that. But I don't think the football IQ is there, so I'm not sure if he's ever going to develop into what a first-round pick should be, and it obviously will always go down as a Eagles draft day bust.
John, you wrote a piece on 97.3 ESPN.com today about Mychal Kendricks requesting a trade. That apparently that conversation was had back in January. And he talked about it today in the locker room. And my question to you is, what kind of ripple effect do you expect to see from that among other guys in the locker room? Because, you signed a contract, and he said it, it's the contract I signed. But now he's saying he really had requested a trade and wants a trade. And what kind of ripple effect do you think that might have around the locker room, if any?
I don't think it'll have much, because, one thing players understand is you don't get involved in generally other people's contract negotiations or contracts or things of that nature. And if anything, Mychal Kendricks is overpaid for a guy who plays 27% of the snaps, which is what he did last season. And that's why the Eagles were looking to move him. And that's why he wants to move on, not because of the salary. He's very happy. And he mentioned when someone asked if he was disgruntled, he said, no, I'm happy. I get paid to play football. And he gets paid very handsomely. He mentioned that in a weird way, he's saving his body, so maybe the prime of his career will extend longer than it would normally. And a lot of people would like to be in the situation. But he's also very, very competitive, and he'd like to be on the football field. And I think he sees his own brother, Eric, in Minnesota, turning into a really good player, and they have such similar skill sets. I mean, they're both short, they're both undersized, but the Vikings have found a way to make it work. I think he sees that, and he's a little bit frustrated. And eventually, obviously, he'll move on. But right now, I mean, the Eagles have to be concerned from the standpoint that Nigel Bradham might be suspended at the beginning of this season. So at least for 1 or 2 weeks, Mychal Kendricks might be a starting linebacker in the nickel defense again and playing significant snaps. And he's really the only proven depth they have at that position. So at least early in the season, he might turn out being more important than people think.
John, Kendricks only played 26.8% of the snaps last year. That's less than Jalen Watkins, less than Bo Allen. That's less than even Vinny Curry did. He wasn't on the field enough for us to really know what he can do. So isn't part of that the fact that the coaches themselves didn't see enough from him to put him on the field?
No, I mean, and Jim kind of explained that, and that was before we knew the Mychal Kendricks. It had nothing to do with it, but he explained, I mean, the majority of these teams in the NFL today play 11 personnel the majority of the time, and that means 3 receivers are on the field. And when that happens, only 2 linebackers can be on the field. I mean, that's just common sense. And from the Eagles' standpoint, Jordan Hicks and Nigel Bradham are better pass defenders, and they've proven that they are, even though Kendricks is very athletic and should be better in coverage, whatever it is. He doesn't have a feel for it. Whatever you want to blame it on, he's third in that race, and you can't put him on the field when there's 3 receivers on the field. So it becomes a math equation. And when you can only keep 2 out there, he's not going to be out there, and that's why you saw the huge dip in playing time.
When you look at some of this too, John, curious for your thoughts on this, being around Schwartz as much as you are. He is an interesting guy. He is very honest. But Kendricks is not a Schwartz guy. Nigel Bradham is. You look on the, when you look at guys like that are people that are brought in by a coaching staff, naturally the coaching staff seems to sway more towards them over somebody that was left here by a previous regime. How much has that played into maybe Kendricks not getting out there?
Well, I think it plays into it. I think you're right. Coaches are like anybody else. They get comfortable with people they trust. And before last season started and it became clear that Bradham was going to be the nickel linebacker, I thought that was an awful decision because you just look at their skill sets. And Mychal Kendricks should be a better nickel player than Nigel Bradham, but he's not. So Jim was right. I mean, Nigel played very, very well. And at some point you got to put it at the feet of the player. And the fact that one guy's just better at pass coverage than the other, and that's why he's going to be on the field. Michael's faster. He's more explosive. As I said, he should be better, but he's not. So I can't blame Jim Schwartz at this stage for going with the guy he not only trusts and he's comfortable with, but the guy he's proven that he's a better player for what he's looking for.
John Deshaun, you see guys like Le'Veon Bell and Aaron Donald on the national scene holding out of training camp. Can you kind of take us behind the scenes of how do guys and their agents and their camps go about this? What do they really hope to accomplish? And does the organizations, do they prepare for this? Do they know this in advance? Or are they caught off guard? Kind of take us behind the scenes of what really goes on when a player holds out.
No, I mean, the organizations are generally know it's on the table. In the case with Aaron Donald, he's in that realm of an extension, and he's arguably the best defensive tackle in football. So that's a difficult negotiation because he's going to get a monster deal, and that's one of those that can linger. And from a player standpoint, when you're on your rookie deal and you've outperformed it to such a degree as Aaron Donald, about the only leverage you have is to hold out, whether it's off-season work, the voluntary work, or mandatory. The problem is when you get to training camp, you can be fine. So these things tend not to last very long. But from a coach's perspective, I mean, as long as Donald and players like that and Le'Veon Bell are in with a week or two to prepare, and I wrote about this on FanRag Sports yesterday, the preseason and training camp has never meant less in the NFL. And everyone realizes it behind the scene. They don't talk about it because they don't want to let fans in on it. But the CBA that came into effect in 2011, it's limited practice time so much. You can't get all that much accomplished, and from the coach's standpoint, they've shifted towards it's about doing everything possible to keep everyone healthy for week one. That's the main goal. And when you're talking about superstar players, they don't need training camp, and everybody knows it. And as long as they come in with a week or two, you're fine. But obviously, as I mentioned with Aaron Donald specifically, he's going to get a monster deal, so that's a tough negotiation.
John, I seen the other day that someone had wrote, I think it was on Pro Football Talk, about the whole RG3 workout with the Chargers kind of being a ploy for the Chargers from the Bills, basically to not have them drive up the price for Cardale Jones. Does that happen often in the NFL? I seen that it benefited all parties. Is that true in your opinion, that everybody, RG3's names gets back in the media? The Bills get their name. How do you really see that unfolding when those situations come about?
It could be. Sometimes agents ask for a favor when it comes to a player who's sort of off the radar to get a tryout. And if they have a good relationship with a team, they might do it for them. Bill Belichick's done it many times over the years. People thought here, Tim Tebow being brought in the year, thought maybe Chip Kelly was doing a favor to him and his agent to keep his name out there. So it does happen. I don't know as far as the Jones trade. I mean, you're not getting a huge return on that anyway. So I'm not sure how much talking to RG3 is going to drive that down. I just think you always have to do your due diligence, and they were obviously looking for an upgrade in their backup quarterback situation. And if they couldn't work the deal done, you have to kick other tires. I think that was more the aspect that the Chargers were doing. But certainly there are favors done in the NFL.
We're talking with John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, Eagles insider, also covers the NFL for FanRag Sports. John, bringing it back to our backyard, Alshon Jeffery, you wrote on the line, had another really good day at work. And one of the points you make is that Jeffery is going to be the Eagles' most well-rounded receiver they've had in a long time. And I think that, there's all kinds of opinions. Is he a top 10 receiver? Is he top 15? But in my view, isn't it more important that he's just better than what the Eagles had last year? Isn't it just more important that not where he stands versus the rest of the NFL? Isn't it more important, as you said before, that he is a better route runner, that he catches the ball, and he develops chemistry with Wentz, and everything else will just kind of find its way?
Well, it's always better when you have improved, but I think they got a significant improvement here. I mean, you could argue they improved with Torrey Smith over Nelson Aguilar. So technically you're better, but I don't think, Torrey Smith is going to be a world beater, even though he had a good day at practice as well today. But he's limited in different ways. Alshon's on a different level. And the questions surrounding him obviously are health and even the PED suspension in his past. But he's just his catching radius is almost like one of those, Jimmy Graham type tight ends. I mean, he's like a praying mantis out there. Anything that is near him, he just swipes it up. It could be behind him, over his head. Too low. He's got maybe the biggest catching radius of any receiver in the NFL. I would put Julio Jones in that category as well. But there was this one back shoulder that Carson, awful pass, just awful. I don't know how many receivers would have even been close to catching it. He almost caught it. He did drop it at the end. But his ability to get to the football is really impressive. And I mean, when I say most well-rounded, and I'm going to bring up the name, he's the most well-rounded receiver they've had since Terrell Owens. And it's not close. I mean, people can talk about Deshaun Jackson and how effective he is, but in a lot of ways he was a one-trick pony. It was a great trick, but it was one trick. This guy does everything. And Jeremy Maclin didn't have his physical gifts. So this is a whole different world as far as receivers go for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Staying on offense, John, we've been hearing it seems like one of the bright spots early on in camp has been watching Pumphrey do his thing out there. And he's a rookie. He's still got to learn a lot, obviously. But you heard Jim Schwartz today talk about how difficult he can be to try to defend because you just don't know what he's going to do when he's on the field. Receive, run the ball, So talk a little bit about what you've seen out of Pumphrey. Is there a heightened sense of excitement about what that particular player may bring to this team, not only this year, but down the road?
Yeah, I mean, it started early in off-season work. It was pretty evident the Eagles were going to try to get him involved as a receiver, which was a little bit of a surprise because of his history in college as the all-time leading rusher, and he didn't catch the ball that much at all. But the Eagles felt he had natural receiving skills, and for the most part, he's held up pretty well. But I can tell you, if 5 days of camp mean anything, this team is going to throw a ton of swing passes and a ton of screen passes to Sproles and Donnell Pumphrey. And they even have this 21 pony formation, they call it, when both of them are on the field at the same time. Now, I don't know how that's going to work when the real bullets are flying, because at some point you have to have somebody on the field that can block somebody, and that's going to be very difficult. If you have Pumphrey and Sproles out there a lot together. But the concern, I mean, he's very explosive. The concerns are obvious. He's a really, really small guy. And I don't know if he can hold up with a lot of touches with NFL linebackers and even defensive backs taking hits on him. I mean, at the college level, he barely got hit. He was so good. That's not going to happen here. I mean, he's going to get squared up. And he's going to get hit at times, especially if you're giving him the ball on a swing pass or a screen. At some point, 176 pounds is difficult to have longevity in the NFL. And people have made the comparison since he's got here to Darren Sproles, and I've said it on the show with you guys a lot. I don't see it, because I always say Darren Sproles is not small, he's short. Darren Sproles is incredibly, incredibly thick in his lower body. He might be pound for pound the strongest guy on the Philadelphia Eagles. He can bench press 350. He's a physical freak. Donnell Pumphrey is like a stick figure. So I don't know if he can hold up. If he can, he's explosive.
Well, one thing it seems like, John, that there is that Sproles-esque kind of, I think, more his size, like you said, but you're right about the bottom half of Sproles' body. When you look at what Sproles can do, he avoids that big hit squared up. That's really the reason he's been able to last this long. With Pumphrey, we'll see whether or not he can learn some of that from a guy like Sproles. Have you seen much in the way of Sproles trying to mentor this kid and try to give him, some of what he knows and has learned about how to be a smaller player in this league?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're always together in the same individual drills and things like that. Darren's a really, Scott, is a soft-spoken guy.
Yep.
He doesn't he's not very boisterous like some of the other guys, but you can see, and sometimes in the NFL, it's really difficult when you're a veteran player and there's a young player who's brought in as your eventual replacement. There's almost a natural inclination of not wanting to help them, and why should you want to help them? But in Darren's case, he's indicated, hemmed and hawed a little bit, but he said previously this is probably going to be his last year. And although he's playing at such a high level, I don't think it has to be. But so I do think he's taken Pumphrey under his wing. But I mean, Darren Sproles does things that you can't teach. You really can't. I mean, as far as a punt returner, as far as a receiver out of the backfield, he's such a unique player. It's tough to duplicate. And I think Pumphrey, if he succeeds, it's not going to be because he's a mirror. It's going to be because he's his own individual.
John, switching back to the national scene. So Barry Church had some interesting comments after practice day with the Jaguars. He went on to say that the Jaguars have more talent than the Cowboys team he was on last year. He also went on to say that they practice harder, and he's been very impressed with the players and the practices and the culture. And is there any validity to any of this, or is this just a guy on a new team talking up his new team and he's just happy?
Well, I can only guess. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think what Barry meant is the Jaguars have better talent on defense, and they do. I mean, the Cowboys are not successful because of the guys on their defense. They're loaded on offense, and sort of Rod Marinelli does things with mirrors seemingly every year. But if you look at what Jacksonville's been able to do on free agency in the draft the last couple of years, Church is a part of that, but Calais Campbell, Malik Jackson, Jalen Ramsey, Miles Jack, I mean, yeah, they have more talent on defense than the Dallas Cowboys. In fact, it's not close. Now, offense counts too. And you could say the same thing about the Jaguars' offense compared to the Cowboys' offense. It's not close. Dallas is significantly better. So I'm guessing that's what he meant. As far as the Jaguars practicing harder, now that Tom Coughlin's there and Doug Marrone is there and Jason Garrett's still the coach of the Cowboys, I can certainly believe that. I'll say that.
Now, the reason I'm bringing this up because didn't a lot of people last year look at the Jaguars on paper and say this team is going to make major steps forward, and they didn't. They were horrible last year. They fired their coach. So I don't know is some of this hollow or not because they still have to prove it on the field.
Well, sure. I just mentioned the Jaguars are one of those teams that seem to win the off season every year. Because they do so much in free agency. They're always picking in the top 5 of the draft, so they're always getting high-profile players, and it never translates on the field. A lot of it has to do, obviously, with the quarterback and the fact that Blake Bortles took a big step back last season, and, it's a former number 3 overall pick. So ultimately, I said the same thing with the Cleveland Browns. I mean, a lot of people think the Browns won this offseason because of all the talent they were able to add on their offensive line. On paper, it looks phenomenal. You bring in Myles Garrett, who people think is one of the best pass rushing prospects in years, but they still don't have a quarterback. So until you solve that issue, you're going to struggle.
He is John McMullen. He covers the NFL for FanRag Sports. You can follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen. He writes for 97.3 ESPN.com every day. So if you're looking for Eagles updates, he has updates every single day so you can get your Eagles fix. John, hope you get to enjoy your weekend, at least some.
Yeah, well, we have a monsoon coming, so they canceled the open practice at the Link. They moved it back to Sunday because of the weather. So probably going to be in the practice bubble at NovaCare tomorrow. And the officials speak. That's always a fun day.
Oh, well, good luck with that. Take care, John.
All right. Thanks, guys.